Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a life. The president never gave me any deadline.
Hello everyone, thank you again for the second time, the working week, joining us here on Global Morning. We do not take your time with us here on the program for granted. We are Mofwebe, especially saying we are delighted knowing that you're sharing the next 3 hours with us here on Global Morning. Today's Tuesday, and it's a wonderful opportunity to be interactive on the program again today, discussing big stories across our country, and maybe in the middle of our conversations today, somewhat beyond the shores of Nigeria. But of course, as they say, charity begins at home and justice from the next door. Incidentally, we understand that a lot will start jumping off in the country, no matter ours, well, yes, politically speaking. Because first off, the National Assembly resumes from its recess today. Well, yes, of course, they had a break just before Christmas, and that was the way of winding down on 2024. Now it's a new year, so they're getting back to work today. So question is, once they roll up their sleeves, in a manner of speaking, today, what will be top priorities for them? We will look at those for you. Two big issues, quite frankly, others in the middle. But then the conversation around telecoms tariff hike, for which, of course, the labor unions led by the NLC, the Nigeria Labour Congress, had planned a protest for today. Well, they said it was designed to be a peaceful demonstration. It still writes on the front burner, even though, however, that has changed a little, given the fact that the federal government now realizes that, hold on a second, this ought to be about Nigerians. And if that's the case, how do we put the best interest of citizens, particularly the end users of telecom services in this country, first? So what has the government done so far? Today we understand that the government is setting up, some sort of a panel. The term is always a committee to look at these issues and see what exactly are the factors we are dealing with here, whether on the side of the service providers in the telecoms sector or on the part of consumers themselves across the country. In the middle of that, you can't take away the factor of the regulator, the NCC in this instant case. So these are some of the issues that are being considered. On the basis of this, we now understand that the Nigeria Labour Congress says maybe we should sheath our sword, quite frankly, for a second and see what the government will do going forward in this regard, because there has been, several persons, entities railing against this idea of raising telecoms tariff by 50%. So we wait to keep our fingers crossed and see what the implications of all of these efforts being made now to ameliorate the plight of Nigerians will look like. But let's not forget what the arguments have been like in these last few weeks. First off, the operators themselves, the providers of telecom services in Nigeria, say that we need to keep our businesses going. We need to keep serving Nigeria. We need to not only sustain quality of service, we have an obligation to continue to raise the bar. However, that will totally be impossible until, of course, we are able to have the needed resources, which is very vital to keep our businesses afloat, right? That's their argument. And, development experts say that argument is as valid as it comes. However, on the part of Nigerians, their own point is simple. There's so much of hunger, there's so much of hardship already, so why would you add one extra layer of difficulty to further complicate our plight? All right, so they say this is an ill-timed move. But there was an argument yesterday on Big Talk with Michael Edikon when one of the guests, the only guest on the program, by the way, someone who has a background in policy analysis, said, look, how is it that nobody is explaining to Nigerians that once there is an issue with the telecom service providers or providers of any essential service across sector in this country, you see the regulators, falling over themselves to want to intervene quickly in the interests of the service providers. However, when it's Nigerians, when it's the consuming public, so to say, all right, crying out and reaching out to the regulators to say, look, we have concerns that border on quality of service, the billing, and so on and so forth, and even things around response to complaints regarding maybe issues of disconnections for those who are in the power sector, or in the case of telecoms, you talk about drop calls, you talk about how that you're supposed to buy a data package or plan of 10 gig, but in the end, what you're getting is probably something in the neighborhood of 6 gig or even less, and nobody's paying attention to all of those pleas. And he cited in the case of the power sector, for example, how that the act is designed, by his own assessment, to favor the distribution companies as against the consumer of consumers, I should say, of electricity in Nigeria. Quite a complex conversation to have, if you ask me. On one end, it's political, on some level, it's economic, and then on a different front, is social. So when you put all of these factors together, you realize that it's going to take an entire night to break this all down for you. Let's take a quick break on the program. We have papers headlines for you as well on the program this morning. Then, of course, at the top of the hour, we'll bring you the Global AM News. Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics. And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
All right, so we just mentioned a while ago how that the National Assembly resumes from its recess today. Several issues in its dockets, yes, as they say in court, but quite frankly, there are two big ones that I'm sure most Nigerians will be very interested in. First of all is the tax reforms bills that have generated so much of controversies end to end in this country the last couple of months into the New Year break. And then, of course, up until this point. Now, we understand those bills are still in front of the National Assembly. There have been calls for them to be withdrawn totally, even at the level of the National Executive Council, consisting of all the governors in this country and chaired by the number 2 citizen in the country, the person of the Vice President. And now it will appear, because they are executive bills, the presidency is not in a hurry. Let's not just say they wouldn't want to, as it were, withdraw those bills. The president has said, look, it's very simple, right? Those bills are already in front of the National Legislature. So what do? Any entity who has a concern should go make their own contribution while the bills remain with the National Assembly. So there's no need to withdraw and reconsider. But the argument of some stakeholders is, look, including governors, particularly all 19 state governors from the North, is withdraw these bills and then consult widely, because there are people in this country who believe that wild consultations were not carried out prior to sending these pieces of legislative proposals to the National Assembly. Therefore, they believe that the honorable and ideal thing to do at this point is to have them record, and then they can be resent or represented, as it were, having done extensive consultations across the board. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now. It will appear that because the bills have recorded a measure of success in front of federal legislators, the presidency would rather that they continue to sustain that trajectory until such a time when they are probably passed. But is that possible given the climate, given the circumstances? Yes, we understand that there has been some tweaking to it, which some of these stakeholders who have railed against the bills have also come to acknowledge and appreciate. But is that far-reaching? Is it enough? Well, we'll find out once legislators begin to deliberate on the issues within these bills starting from today, most likely, all right? But there's a second issue. The second issue is the one that has to do with the 2025 appropriation bill, the one we call the budget proposal. All right, we're looking at something in the neighborhood of 49.70 trillion naira, the highest, of course, so far, all-time high, as they say, right? So the question is, what are going to be some of the concerns that legislators will express? What are the concerns Nigerians will have and also present or talk about? In the meantime, we're seeing members of the federal legislature, whether the Senate or the House of Representatives, saying that we have had to review upward the allocation, the budgetary allocation for some government entities, particularly, say, the NYSC, for example, that is the National Youth Service Corps. We also had to look at that of the NIMC, that is the National Identity Management Commission, which is saddled with a very pivotal mandate. We've also had to look at that of the Nigerian Defense Academy, and we understand that right from the word go, legislators have expressed their discomfort with the 9 billion naira that had originally and initially been earmarked for the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development, where you have Dr. Dele Alake as the minister. They say that is more like a drop in an ocean, or maybe even a little worse than that. So there's a lot of items to be reviewed, either upward or downward. So far, what we know, what we've seen, what is factual, is that we're seeing more of upward review than the other way around. But in all, how will this budget be implemented, particularly from the standpoint of CAPEX, the capital expenditure elements? How will it be funded? Now we're already hearing that, at least from the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, that there is the need, very, very essential, for Nigeria to do some borrowing running into trillions by way of trying to fund. Of course, we understand that a lot is expected from IGRO, whether through FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, or the Nigeria Customs Service and other revenue generating agencies of the government. In the final analysis, how will the 2025 budget be beneficial to the everyday Nigerian in ways that are, well, concrete and measurable? This will be very important today and always. Time to take another break. When we return, we'll be looking at the papers for you.
Many thanks for staying with us on the program. It's Global Morning here on Global TV, and it's time for us to bring to you the front pages of our national dailies. And this morning we'll be starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. Quite a number of headlines right there, but the big story says National Assembly resumes today to accelerate tax reform bills. Above the nameplate, we have condemnations trail as ex-NHIA boss pleads not guilty. Nigeria orders to get 150 billion pounds EU fund, European Union fund. NLC suspends protest over telcos tariff hike. And then we have World Cancer Day. We've become burden to our families. This statement can be attributed to the patients of cancer. Nigeria records over 79,000 of cancer deaths annually. And also we have more treatment centers soon, says federal government. And lastly, on the front page of the Daily Trust, we have court sacks Ohinoyi of Ibira land. These are the stories we have on the front page of the Daily Trust.
All right, let's see. The Vanguard. The Vanguard is our next port of call this morning. Let's see what the big stories are saying. The big one here says FG bans export of crude set aside for local refiners. Then the writer tells us as Nigeria's oil output rises 7.38% to 1.67 million barrels per day. Then it goes ahead to say Dangote, Port Harcourt, Warri, other refineries need 770,500 BPD. That's according to NUPRC. Bold step will impact nation's economy. CPPE exports. Intervention long overdue. Professor Wumi, Dr. Zaka. Oil prices leap to $76.45. That's $76.45 barrel on supply fears. Oil output has improved. Lokobiri, that's Minister of Petroleum Resources, oil, they're talking. Okay, let's move it up a little. Here it says Delta women protest incessant attacks by herdsmen. On the right end of the front page, the kicker here says Bola Ige's murder. Akonde lied, I didn't withdraw case from courts. Ladoja. And then we'll take it a bit further down. Telco's tariff hike, that's a kicker for you. Labour shells protests. FG sets up 10-man committee to thrash issues. Okay, Queen Agaba was already prepping to see, what will happen today in light of the proposed demonstration, peaceful demonstration. Yes, that Labour had proposed for today. But here we understand that they have had to give that a rethink, and that is on the basis of the fact that the federal government now says we're setting up a committee to look at the issues, right? What really were the factors that necessitated the talk about hike in telecoms tariff in the first instance? And then this again, some people have said will not go down well with the operators themselves because they feel in pidgin parlance, you want to put some sign at Gary now because we're already happy with at least the 50% that the NCC had approved. But now with this idea of the government setting up a panel to say, let's look at the issues, it means, first of all, we can't even move ahead with modality for executing or implementing that 50%. Yes, a 50% raise. That's number one. Number two, this may even now dim the hope that that can ever happen, at least anytime soon. Because once the federal government weighs in, it means there will be dialogue after dialogue after dialogue, of course, between the federal government delegation and leadership of the organized labor. And then you have stakeholders who feel, well, this is the time to really protect the interests of Nigerians, especially from the standpoint of consumer advocacy and all of that. So it's just going to get a little more protracted, especially for the telecoms service providers.
Yes, and then, there have been talks about, I hope this is not just another avenue or ways to shelf the protest and then create talks around it,
meanwhile you're driving the 50% increase.
Exactly. So these are some of the concerns of Nigerians, but we hope to see what the outcome of this committee would be. Let's look at our next point of call.
I think we still have about three more headlines to wrap up from the Vanguard newspaper real quick. So as we return to the Vanguard now, what more do we have at the very foot of the paper this morning? Front page, bottom left. Edo Governor Poll Tribunal, that's your kicker. PDP Ighodalo close case with 19 witnesses. One tribunal that has been as dramatic as it come. PDP crisis, another kicker. Ude Okoye's camp kicks as Ayawu resumes office at National Secretariat. And then lastly, we wrap it up with sports on the Vanguard newspaper. WCQ, MNEK gives Super Eagles 50% chance. Well, it's a case of half bread is better than none right now. Okay, so we tied up on the Vanguard newspaper, and that takes us to our very next one.
The Nation this morning, we have big story. Health sector gets $1 billion for human capital development. Above the nameplate, Regu makes 137 billion naira PAT, up by 71%, declares dividend of 21.25 billion naira. And then we have court remands ex-NHIS boss Yusuf in prison. Rider says hearing resumes February 12th. NLC drops planned protest over 50% telecom tariff hike. PSC never directed IG Egbetokun's retirement. Southeast monarchs abolish Ezendigbo title outside Igbo land. We also have here 4.8 billion naira for HIV and AIDS treatment. These are the riders for the proposed $1 billion, or rather, the $1 billion given for human capital development in the health sector. Rider says 4.8 billion naira for HIV and AIDS treatment. Nigeria braces up for impact of U.S. policy shift in aid. We also have Nigeria will reduce external borrowing, Edun tells World Bank. Federal government subsidizing electricity with 200 billion naira monthly. It seems like you want to react to this story.
Yes, I sure want to, Queen. You see, there are people who have argued that, look, it's not so much about the volume of investment you're making by way of subsidizing any kind of service, especially something like electricity. There's the argument that this only favors, for the most part, the rich, the already affluent in society. So how does this trickle down to the everyday Nigerian? Now the authorities are telling us brace up. That's what they're saying to Nigerians, brace up for a hike in electricity tariff while we are still here in the middle of that of telecoms. All right. This morning I was talking with, I wasn't part of the conversation. I was more like someone who was just sitting it out. So I was listening. Two gentlemen talking, and one of them is saying, look, should this increment happen, this hike in electricity tariff, you for all you know, you may just inadvertently be giving people an excuse to be more involved in energy theft, or what they call, well, of course, bypass and all of that. Because when you have a system like ours, where the economic challenges are mounting by the day, what you should be more focused on is how do you ease the pain? How do you give people soft landing? How do you make life a little more bearable for them? All right. However, if conversely, you're now rather more focused or obsessed with the idea of how do we raise this, how do we raise that, how do we make sure Queen Agaba pays more for fuel, she pays more for rent, she pays 50% more on a dress, all right, then it means what you're doing, what you're telling her is you're going to have to deal with more challenges, economically speaking. And people have said, we keep increasing the tariffs on everything, but people's salaries are not going up, really. People are not earning more. People are not even selling more per se, because people are buying less now. People are looking for creative ways to be more innovative around how they spend. Therefore, the purchasing power has dwindled quite significantly. So this issue of 200 billion looks huge in volume in terms of how it sounds, but the question is, to what extent and in what specific ways does it rub off on citizens across this country?
Absolutely. Big question. How does it rub off on citizens across the country? Well, we still have one more story here. INEC tenders BVAS devices by Edo PDP. And lastly, we have Chinese ducked over impersonation. I came across, some footages online of some foreigners who are involved in Yahoo fraud,
The internet fraud,
yes,
right?
they're hibernating, in somewhere around Lagos, in different parts of the country. Foreigners, doing all of these things. And then we saw videos and pictures of these foreigners. They were all masked up, wearing face masks, I think, and lined up, and they were conveyed in a bus. And then the reactions
like
from
a
the
staff
comment
bus,
section, yes, like
a corporate bus.
And there somebody was saying, what happens to Black Maria? Because when you come to, in fact, sometimes that we've seen cases where Yahoo boys and some of these fraudsters
They are meant to sit on the ground.
They are handcuffed. They sometimes they arrest them in kekes and all manners. But when it comes to these foreigners,
There has to be an executive approach.
Yes,
to it.
executive approach to how they are being apprehended, and all of that. And I like that we're taking the initiative, because some of these people, I like that the fact that they were apprehended and they were also paraded, and then it was in the news as well, so that all other people who are not Nigerians, foreigners, don't see this country as a place where they can hibernate and carry out all sorts of criminal activities. Believe me, there are a lot of foreigners who have the mentality that because it's Nigeria, they can do away with certain things, and so they feel comfortable. Some of them have been carrying out these crimes or these vices for a very long time, for years now. And I like the effort the police is taking, our security personnel are taking to ensure that these people are apprehended and they're also put out in the media.
Right.
Well, these are the stories we have on the front page of the Nation newspaper. The Punch.
Let's see what we have on the Punch, everyone. Just the top right corner of the Punch, particularly the one that is adjacent the nameplates of the Punch newspaper for you this morning. But we're taking a quick break at this point quickly. We'll return with the rest of the paper headlines shortly. Do stay with us. All right, let's look at the big story on the front page of the Punch newspaper for you. As always, the kicker here says telecom tariff hike. NLC halts protest as FG plans review panel. All right. Then what else? It has one writer with it that says Labour leader Ajero insists committee's report will determine Congress's next step. Cyber terrorism, court remands 42 Chinese, Filipinos, others, $222,729 forfeiture. Quite a lot of money there, and they look more like tourists here, all right, with their handy
sometimes
bags.
these people are given special treatment when they walk into malls and certain offices because of the nature of their color or because of their nationality, not knowing that these people are here
perpetrating
crimes.
There was one we heard about lately, recently, Queen, and I think that was a few weeks ago. That a particular house was raided by operators of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission around Gudu here in Abuja, and a place that I thought to be an office the entire time, it was found to be a hub of cybercrime. All right. So what they do is they have computers lined up, arranged like the way you would have a normal working pool, like a workstation in a corporate entity, that kind of thing. So that's the way the whole place is set up. So the entire time, the impression in your head is this is a responsible business running and all of that. But the whole time, what they were doing behind closed doors was cybercrime, right? So the FCC gets a lead and follows it, and then the next thing is these guys are busted. And for the most part, the people behind it, the henchmen, as they say, are Chinese people, right? Now, this is not an attempt to cast aspersion on Chinese people. We're seeing Chinese people do good in Nigeria. We've seen them bring value across sector, culturally and otherwise. But the point is, foreigners must be subjected to our laws. They must be made to understand, quite frankly, that there are things you can't do here.
And
if you decide to be recalcitrant and go ahead to do those things, you can't get away with them. It's very important. We heard of how some Asians before now, with factories in Lagos, would make Nigerian workers, let's be clear, Nigerian workers, all right, do the night shift, what we call the night beats in media, and then they would lock the factories from 10 p.m., sometimes as early as 9 p.m. So they don't open those factories until 6 a.m. The idea, the owners and the operators of these factories would say, is to ensure that the workers at night do not evade or abscond or just leave the factory and go be doing something else. Therefore, you have to lock them in between 9 and 10 p.m. and then you don't get to open those doors again until 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Now, that's not even the bad news. So on this particular night, there's fire outbreak.
Oh my goodness.
So everybody gets roasted. It happened in Lagos. Maybe we'll look for those stories. I mean, maybe even do a documentary of some of these things. I mean, these are underreported issues in Nigeria. So the question is, what did the law do to the people who were behind that heinous crime? Right? Because that's some level of, some degree of murder.
Exactly.
How do you do that? Didn't you take into cognizance the possibility of an outbreak of any kind, the hazard, associated with such an act or practice, right? So these are things we shouldn't be allowed to be swept under the carpet, right? Okay, let's take it further down, everyone. Front page of the Punch newspaper still. Left bottom, or bottom left, it says, Makinde demands diligence as Oyo gears up for Alaafin's coronation. Police grill Ogunpa drunk monarch suspended for 6 months. Police grilled Ogunpa drunk monarch suspended for 6 months. Bola Ige murder, that's a kicker for you. Ladoja demands Akonde's apology, threatens legal action. Let's see if we can see one more for you here. Yes, adjacent the nameplate, top right. Here it tells us, it says, LG autonomy, that's another kicker. Not get conscious CBN against colluding with governors, may hire auditors. Above that, 200 billion naira monthly electricity subsidy benefits reach Nigerians. That's according to Tinubu's aid. Therefore, the government is considering lifting or suspending that subsidy just the way it had done almost 2 years ago with the energy or the oil sector, right, on petroleum products in particular. But let's look at this issue of local government autonomy and the CBN now saying that each of these local government councils, remember we have like 774 of them across the country, must show 2-year audited statement of accounts. In other words, if Queen Agaba is a local government chairman, Uyagumofungbe is a local government chairman, they must all present 2-year audited accounts, a statement of accounts, all right, for their local government. That's a precondition for allocation, federal allocation, to be paid directly into the accounts of local councils. Now, people have been divided about this conversation because they are saying, look, hold on a second. These local government chairmen have been mismanaging council funds the entire time. So the fact that we are saying you now have autonomy, you now have a bit of latitude is not a license to be reckless, fiscally speaking, with funds belonging to local governments. That's one argument. The counter argument, however, is that NOGET, the Nigerian Union of Local Government Employees, is now saying that the Central Bank of Nigeria, in the guise of trying to do due diligence, should not be found colluding or collaborating with state governors to further emasculate the local government councils, because the practice has been that governors or state governments had been in charge of local government funds the entire time. But CBN is saying that this is the due diligence that has to be done. If you say, let's hold the president accountable or the federal government accountable, let's hold state government or state governors accountable, is it also fair and equitable that we should hold local government chairmen and local councils accountable? Yes, well, source for the goose, right?
Yes,
source for the gander. All right, our last paper this morning is This Day newspaper.
Okay, on the front page of This Day newspaper, let's start with the headline above the nameplate. It says, Federal government approves 4.2 trillion naira for Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, other major road projects nationwide. Rider says, OK's 159.5 billion naira for FCT projects. targets 2 million jobs, $100 billion GDP boost with new creative tourism infrastructure plan. CBN report, banks and other financial institutions reported higher default rates for loans in Q4. We have Donald Trump, Ramaphosa bicker over South Africa's land expropriation law. Rider says U.S. President vows to cut funding to African country, set to extend sweeping tariff to EU and the UK. Big story here says NUPRC writes oil producers threatens sanctions over non-supply to local refineries. The rider says Komolafe advises refiners to adhere to international best practices in procurement, operational matters as well. Also, Vehigen says federal government targets 2.7 million barrels per day crude oil output by 2027. We also have University of Environment for Ogoni land. Then we have pictures there of the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Port Harcourt. We have picture of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as well. And we also have quite a number of people, Speaker of the House of Reps right there as well. Well, these are the stories we have on the front page of this day, but I want us to react to reports of projects. The story above the nameplate that we have that says federal government approves 4.2 trillion naira for Lagos Calabar Coastal Road and other major road projects nationwide. Over time, we've seen in the papers, heard in the news of these funds, these budgets that are allocated for road projects, and still yet we have dilapidated roads. Some of these roads are, not duly or properly done. In a space of 6 months, you start seeing potholes or cracks and, all of those things on the roads. And the one that even gets me is targets 2 million jobs and $100 billion GDP boost with new creative tourism infrastructure plan. I look forward to the tourism infrastructure plan with, these budgets that are set aside for it, and the proposed growth that we're supposed to see in the tourism sector.
On account of that budgetary allocation, right?
On account of that budgetary allocation, because for a long time we've heard the federal government talk about tourism. In fact, in most manifestos, before both governors for governorship aspirants and even presidential manifesto. I think from President Bola Tinubu's manifesto, I heard him talk about tourism and plans to revitalize and reform. Just make Nigeria a tourist hub. Particularly here in Africa. So I look forward to it because we've talked about how blessed this nation is, some of the wonderful resources we have, wonderful places, sites, but our major challenge has been insecurity.
Right.
And now that we've seen increased cases of insecurity, headers, farmer clashes, kidnappers, bandits attacks, and all of those things in places that would have been perfect for tourist purposes. I look forward to seeing how this will be possible, because if we're investing this much into the tourism sector, then we want to ensure that there is security, because this investment would go to waste if there's no adequate security. And then I look forward to seeing what will become of some of our sites, because Nigeria is truly blessed, beautiful sites, beautiful places.
We engaged two gentlemen sometime last week around this issue of tourism, right? The touristic sites in Nigeria, how that we have not even started scratching the surface regarding the tourism potential that this country has. We keep talking about it, we mouth it a lot, but the question is, have we taken a step to say, let's explore this potential, this blessing that we have in tourism? There are countries that live survive practically on tourism. They don't have natural resources like we do. They don't have things like oil and minerals and stones and water. They don't have all of those things, all right? But how do they survive? Tourism, they just have people who throng into their countries almost on a daily basis, and the revenue from it is massive. But again, that's because they've been able to systemize it. That's because they've been able to commercialize it. That's because they've been able to expand it in such a way that they're able to get the accruing benefits from it. So what is the blueprint, or if you like, the roadmap for Nigeria's tourism sector is very important. It's not enough. It's even far out for you to have just a minister in that ministry. What is the quality of leadership being provided? What is the vision? What are we looking at in 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years for that sector? It's very important. It's not enough for us to say the tourism sector is a $200 billion industry.
GDP.
Exactly. So what's your chunk of it? How much of the piece of the action is Nigeria going to get from it? And what are the specifics in that regard? Who says tourism cannot provide jobs or create jobs, for example?
We know that.
I mean, we have people in the hospitality sector who have a wealth of experience. They have the training, they have the education, they have the certification that stands tall anywhere in the world. But how much are we using them here in Nigeria? And nobody's even having the conversation around what exactly have we achieved the last 20 years, for example. Okay, we may not have done so much in the last 20 years, but what should the next 20 years look like for us? What more do we need to invest? What are the systemic structural problems we need to solve? You see, Nigeria's issues have to do with problem solving. And that's a big elephant in the room. Everybody thinks it's about just putting money in it. Yes, you must put money to drive it. We can't take that away. However, that money put there by way of budgeting must be seen to be solving problems in ways that are remarkably practical. That's the point.
Absolutely.
You just mentioned the coastal highway a while ago. That's a project that has to do with road. We have several federal road projects across this country. Whether you go up north, you go to the south east, you go to the southwest or the south-south, we have all of them. But the question is, how much have we put into these roads in the last 25 years? What have we gotten? Is it commensurate with the investment that has been made? So if we invest money, if we spend money, if we earmark money, if we allocate funds, and they are not solving problems, it means we are even deepening the problem. For example, talk about education. That, well, by UNESCO standard or recommendation, we're supposed to be doing 26% of our annual budget in education. In other words, whatever we budget every year, 26% of it should go to education. I'm not sure we're ready for that conversation today, because we're still doing something in the neighborhood of 7-10%, overall less than 10%. But the question is, even if we are doing 4%, for example, is that 4% budgetary allocation solving the problems in the education sector that we can see? Yes, we have seen TED Fund do a lot of work, but let's not also forget that TED Fund is an interventionist agency of the federal government. And that's why there's this division, this divided, if you like, stance on whether or not TED Fund should be scrapped. Of course, most of us will say, let's leave TED Fund to continue to do the amazing work it's been doing. But others are saying that it's a knee-jerk approach to development in the education sector. You're supposed to have something more sustainable.
Absolutely, more sustainable. Rightly put. Well, that's where we would leave the conversation on our front page review this morning. We'll take a quick break, after which we'll bring you the Global AM News. Do stay with us, don't go anywhere. The program continues.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics. And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Hello and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the Global AM News, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Queen Agaba. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and free to air on Nigecomsat. Ahead of the possible passage of the 49.70 trillion naira 2025 budget proposal this week by the National Assembly, the deputy spokesman of the House of Reps, Philip Agbese, has given reasons why some agencies considered very critical to the nation's socio-economic development have been penciled down for improved funding in the 2025 fiscal year. Speaking during an interview in Abuja, Agbese says the House is making a case for improved funding for the National Identity Management Commission, the National Youth Service Corps, and the Nigerian Defense Academy in the 2025 budget proposal, adding that other government agencies are likely to benefit from this. President Bola Tinubu has officially signed off a bill establishing the Federal University of Environment Technology in Ogoni, Rivers State. Special advisor to the President on Policy Communication, Boala Daniel, emphasized that the move aligns with the Tinubu administration's renewed hope agenda, which prioritizes correcting past inequalities and building inclusive institutions for balanced national development. The Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TETFund, Architect Sonny Echonu, has commended President Bola Tinubu for recognizing technical and vocational education and training, also called TVET, as the major pathway to create jobs in the country. The Executive Secretary made the statement during the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between TETFund and the Nigerian Academy of Engineering at the TETFund headquarters in Abuja. President, Nigerian Academy of Engineering, Engineer Rahamon Bello, in a remark says the event is historic and marks the beginning of bringing together all agencies and professional bodies that are pivotal in assisting the government on entrenchment of technical and vocational engineering education and training activities.
So this is a combination of these efforts. Over time, Nigeria has come up with several policies on TVET. We've tried to encourage technical education by prioritizing it even in terms of JAMB admissions. But you recall that the demand side and the supply had never been in sync. And if you go around our campuses and our institutions, it will not be wrong to say that all these years we've been paying lip service to the idea of promoting TVET. And why do I say that? Our polytechnics that are intended to be the pillars of TVET in this country, many of them are offering courses that have no bearing with TVET.
And I would think that the signing of this MOU is long overdue. And I'm glad that today the Executive Secretary has found time to sit with us to sign this MOU. The objective of TVET is very clear: to provide a critical mass of people and prepare them with skills and equip them for the workforce. At the Nigerian Society of Engineers, we have
the federal government of Nigeria has commenced the process of re-enrolling this through the recent launch of National Skills Qualification Framework (NSQF) and the inclusion of the National Skills Qualification Number 26 into the scheme of the service of Nigeria in Nigeria. A lot of support is required by all concerned to maintain and increase the tempo through realigning and cooperating that we are doing today to change appropriate state-by-state requirements for the objectives to realize and keeping both the governments and the federal and provincial levels on their toes on their roads.
The success of any government and constituted authority can only be fulfilled if subordinates align themselves with the vision and aspirations of the leadership. This is the call at the special Thanksgiving Mass organized by Mother of Benue State Governor Mama Martina Alia for all appointees under Governor Hyacinth Alia's administration, held at the Chapel of Grace Government House, Makurdi. Correspondent Felicity Ndere was there for Global Television, and here is her report.
The governor noted that the Thanksgiving Mass is a gesture of profound gratitude to God for his continued guidance and protection for all appointees in the administration of Governor Alia for their tireless dedication to the progress and development of the state. The special event is also to appreciate God's mercy in sparing the life of the principal private secretary to the governor, Dr. Emmanuel Chingi, for surviving a domestic accident. In line with the Holy Scriptures, which urge Christians to offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving and fulfill their vows to the Most High, the family gathered to give thanks.
Working together, understanding his vision, and doing what he wants you to do for the benefit of the people of Benue is very important. But another important element is the interministerial cooperation. There must be cooperation among the appointees.
Some speakers and representatives of groups in their remarks appreciated the governor's mother for seeking God's presence in her son's administration. Governor Hyacinth Alia in his remarks stated that the state has over the years gone through so much, stressing the need to examine the progress made by the state and called on everyone to recommit and rededicate themselves as ambassadors of the state. The governor noted that his administration will continue to be guided by the principles of rules, processes and procedures, and thanked his appointees for understanding his unquenchable stance for good governance, insisting that good governance must be demystified to make things work better.
The import of this Thanksgiving, even to me, demonstrates the fact that there's so much more we can do for the state. If all of us are committed, if all of us are rededicated and recommit ourselves, to fostering Benue forward and for projecting the ideologies that promote the growth and prosperity of the state, there would be a huge, tremendous difference. There's so much we can do to add value to our state.
The representation of a souvenir to the mother of the governor for remembering those serving under her son as the governor of Benue State. From the Chapel of Grace at Benue State Government House, Makurdi, Felicity Ndere reporting for Global TV News.
The Nigerian Police Force, in a series of operations across the country in January, has arrested 237 armed robbery suspects, 162 kidnapping suspects, 240 murder and homicide suspects, 53 individuals for unlawful possession of prohibited firearms, 130 rape suspects, and 123 suspected cultists. During a press briefing in Abuja, the Force Public Relations Officer, ACP Olumuyiwa Adejobi, highlighted key achievements, particularly those of the Federal Intelligence Department and Intelligence Response Team in Abuja. Kikeloma Okere has more.
The Force Public Relations Officer, Muyiwa Adejobi, announced the arrest of an 8-member gun-running syndicate, including Joseph Tara, Victor Ali, Abua Yusuf, Bako Isa, Salamatu Ilia, Solomon Gabele, Musa Arene, and Beatrice Chong. Investigation reveals that Salamatu Ilia had sold 900 rounds of AK-47 ammunition to Bako Isa, who later sold 700 rounds to Victor Palm. In another operation, Amos Sunday Gang was arrested for illegal possession of firearms. He claimed to have found a pistol hidden in the cushion of an apartment he rented in Congo, Russia, Jos, Plateau State in 2021, but failed to report or surrender the weapon.
Recovery of 172 various firearms, 3,134 ammunition of various calibers. The force was also able to recover 115 stolen vehicles and rescued 387 victims of kidnapping.
He said he was kidnapped twice. That was his reason to harm himself with AK-47.
To harm himself with AK-47 rifle. Okay, who?
Says since he got the rifle, that kidnappers have not visited him since.
Who told?
I'm arrested because I gave Baku Isa ammunition to sell.
You gave him ammunition to sell for you?
Yes, sir.
Now that you have been arrested,
yes, sir.
What message do you have to tell other women like you? I don't want us to interrogate you so much.
Okay.
As a woman, as a mother. You have children?
Yes, sir.
How many children do you have?
One daughter.
One daughter?
Yes, sir.
Another girl?
Yes,
so
sir.
What message do you have for women like you?
I regret this thing, honestly.
ACP Adejobi reaffirmed the Nigerian police commitment to protecting lives and properties, assuring that effort to combat crime will continue relentlessly.
The IGP has given us the marching order that in our action plan, drawn or designed, we have intention of reducing crime in Nigeria by 50% the first quarter of this year. And this is achievable with your support, with the cooperation of everybody, every sector of our community, of our society. We can do it. It's our target, and we are moving towards achieving this goal.
Exhibits displayed during the briefing include a locally made pistol, a semi-automatic pistol, 2 rounds of 7.88 mm live ammunition, an AK-47 rifle, 8 fabricated AK-47 rifle, 4 fabricated revolver guns, 3 fabricated semi-automatic pistol, 2 AK-47 magazine, and 1,121 rounds of live AK-47 ammunition. Kike Lomo Okeri, Global Television News.
Chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Ola Olukoyede, says some Nigerians complain of corruption but support corrupt leaders in various ways when they are prosecuted. Speaking in Abuja during a visit by officials of the Center for Crisis Communication, led by Chris Olukolade, the Commission's boss pointed out the contradiction in public attitude, noting that while Nigerians decry corruption, they often support and defend corrupt leaders when they are prosecuted. Olukoyede says that the fight against corruption requires collaboration between the government and the citizens, adding that true progress requires a collective commitment to integrity and accountability. Former Minister of Interior and ex-governor of Osun State, Rauf Aregbesola, has met with a man who allegedly attempted to assassinate him in 2006. He says the meeting was held after the man identified as Shikiru Olaboye sought forgiveness from him. Aregbesola disclosed this in a Facebook post stating that the man visited him after calling a local radio station in Oshogbo, Osun State capital, to ask for his pardon. The former governor, who described God as the ultimate forgiver, prayed for divine mercy for himself and his attacker. The Edo State House of Assembly has urged the State High Court to affirm the suspension of the chairman of the 18 local government areas of the state. In a suit filed on January 28, 2025, the House seeks a declaration that by virtue of the provisions of Section 20, subsection B of the Local Government Law 2000, Edo State, the first claimant, has the power to suspend a chairman or vice chairman of a local government council in Edo State. The House had on December 17, 2024, suspended all the local government chairmen and their deputies for what they described as insubordination to Governor Monday Okpebolo. The personal assistant to President Bola Tinubu on constituency affairs, Khadija Karim, has urged youths, particularly students in the Southwest, to take full advantage of the federal government's student loan program to support their education. Speaking at a town hall meeting with key stakeholders in Oyo State held at Koto Hotel, Ikolaba, Ibadan, Karim expressed concern over the low participation of students in the region compared to other parts of the country. She emphasized that the loan does not require collateral only a letter of admission and urged parents and guardians to inform their children about the opportunity. Following the confirmation of an Ebola virus disease outbreak in Uganda, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention has intensified surveillance at the country's points of entry, including airports. The agency also advised Nigerians to avoid non-essential travel to affected countries. In a public health advisory issued by the NCDC Director General, Dr. Jide Idris, the agency emphasized that there are currently no reported cases of Ebola in Nigeria. Troops of the 6th Brigade Nigerian Army and Sector 3 of Operation Well Stroke have successfully dismantled a notorious bandit camp in Agwambala, Kambari, within the Karim Lamido local government area of Taraba State. The brigade's acting spokesperson, Captain Oni Olubodunde, in a statement says the operation was executed following credible intelligence on the movement of suspected bandits in the area. Upon reaching the camp, the troops came under fire but swiftly responded, neutralizing one bandit. In a surprising turn, 23 others comprising 19 men and 4 women surrendered without resistance. You're watching the live broadcast of the News AM on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital. Many thanks for staying with us. In business, Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dele Alake, has emphasized the significance of Nasarawa State in advancing the nation's mining sector. Speaking while receiving Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule and Minister of Defense Abubakar Badaru in his office, Alake affirmed that Nasarawa has been a formidable partner in harnessing the state's vast minerals potential for national development. Kikia Lomokere has details.
Speaking at the event, the Minister of Solid Mineral, Dele Alake, says the collaboration is to scale up mining activities in the state, noting that the reform and efforts to promote the mining sector over the last 17 months have begun to bear fruit, with global players increasingly expressing interest in Nigeria's mining industry.
Nasarawa State is really very pivotal to our mineral development in Nigeria, simply because of the endowment. Lithium, for instance, is quite massive in Nasarawa State. So it's like a theater or epicenter of mining in Nigeria.
Nasarawa State Governor Sule Abdullahi commended Dr. Alake for effectively driving President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's agenda on mining development. He acknowledged some challenges such as insecurity, which persist in some areas, prompting the need for further collaboration with the Minister of Defense, while revealing that lithium factories in the state are operating optimally with additional factories under construction, highlighting the imperative of ongoing collaboration with the private sector to strengthen the mining value chain in the states.
All areas of mining, attention is on Nigeria, whether it is lithium, titanium, tantalite, cobalt, and the rest of that. One of the challenges that we continue to have in the area of mining is also security. There is no way you can be having mining activity and everything goes smooth without some sense of security challenges. So the essence of this is for us to put heads together, and to see what we can contribute.
The Minister of Defense, Abubakar Badaru, reiterated the federal government's commitment to eradicating banditry and other criminal activities nationwide, stressing that efforts have already led to the resumption of mining exploration activities in Zamfara State.
What we have been doing, the bandits are now on the run, but the military will not rest on their oars until we end this thing. And the President has given us marching order to end insecurity in every part of our country, by end of this year.
The minister also noted that the National Security Advisor, the Chief of Defense Staff are on the team, working round the clock to actualize the target. Kike Lomo Okeri, Global Television News.
The federal government says it spent 200 billion naira to subsidize electricity monthly. Government stated that this amount benefits the wealthiest 25% of Nigerians rather than those who truly need assistance. The special advisor to President Bola Tinubu on energy, Olu Vehijen, stated this in a statement. Over 55 oil licenses across all blocks in the Niger Delta will expire before the end of 2025, with affected operators yet to know the fate of their assets. This comes as the prospect of oil production in the northern region lingers 2 years after former President Muhammadu Buhari flagged off commercial production at a $3 billion Komani Integrated Development Project. Nigeria's rig activity peaked in the middle of last year, with active rigs increasing from 29 in January to 38 in July and August before stabilizing at around 37 through November. Beyond the shores of Nigeria, annual inflation slowed in Turkey in January for the 8th consecutive month, according to official figures. Figures from Turkey's Tweak Statistics Institute shows that consumer prices rose by 42.1% year-on-year, compared with the 44.3% a month earlier. Turkey has experienced double-digit inflation since 2019, making life increasingly more expensive for millions of people, notably hitting the cost of education, housing, healthcare, and restaurants. On the foreign scene, Ontario, Canada's most populous province and its economic engine, announced a ban on U.S. companies bidding on tens of billions of dollars worth of government contracts and dumped a deal with Elon Musk's Starlink in a pushback to U.S. tariffs. Ontario won't do business with people hell-bent on destroying the economy, according to Premier Doug Ford via his X post. In sports now, five-time NBA All-Star Luka Doncic has joined Los Angeles Lakers in a huge three-way trade deal. Doncic, who moves from Dallas Mavericks, was hailed as a one-of-a-kind young global superstar by the Lakers as the move was confirmed on Sunday night. Brighton and Hove Albion are set to announce the signing of Greek forward Stefanos Tsitsipas in a £22 million deal, with the transfer set to be completed in July. The striker will remain on loan at German club Nürnberg for the rest of the season. Football transfer expert Fabrizio Romano reportedly confirmed the development via a post on X, stating that the 18-year-old has already completed his medical ahead of the summer move. And that's it on the Global AM News, and it came to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365, Star Times channel 276, and free to air on Nightcomsat. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms using @GlobalTVNG and other handles now showing on your screen. I'm Queen Agaba. Thank you for watching, and see you again.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics. And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Well, many thanks for staying with us. We're heading straight to our first conversation of the day, and we have with us in the studio Mr. Chibuzo Okereke, who is a policy analyst, joining us on the program this morning to discuss and look at the proposed strike that is now suspended by the NLC over the 50% tariff increase by telcos. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you again. Yeah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Do you want to walk us through, the situations around this tariff increase, this 50% tariff increase by telcos, the proposed strike, just around this issue?
Well, I think the issue is that citizens are overburdened. You can see we have the tax reform bill that is ongoing, that is also targeted at increasing VAT. We also have the electricity tariff that have just been increased and then segmented into band A, band B, and people are also worried because certain places, because it was done by geographical location, and people are saying there are people within the zones we have classified as C and D that are actually supposed to be in A because of their consumption rate, and government is losing money. Now, over time, you see that the issue of telecom has become the means of livelihood of many people. People largely depend on communications technology for their business, for communications, for virtually everything you do is tied to communications and technology, and therefore it is one sector after the liberalization in the early 2000s that has grown over time. So today we have high dependency ratio of people depending on it, and the poverty level of the people have not also changed. So the increase in tariff, that was why it generated this amount of issue. And you ask yourself, why now? Why everything? People have argued on one end that globally, because of economic situation and the essential nature of these services, that they need to improve the tariff rate so that they can be able to stay in business, because according to them, logistics and running costs have also increased exponentially. However, the economic well-being of the average people is not also there. So maybe where we actually need to bandwidth people into band A, B, and C. Because you see, you pay the same data rate with somebody who is in the village, who does not even have the same level of living standard and economic opportunity with you. You pay the same as an individual, even maybe with companies and what have you. So it's a big challenge. However, it's good that the NLC, no matter what problem you face in a nation state, discussions and negotiation is the order of the day. The only challenge is that in this engagement, you have to also look at other alternatives. In policy design, it's not just straight-jacketed. NLC may not even effectively negotiate for millions of people across the country. But it is good that they are putting out themselves, because their workers are involved to engage and negotiate. And the best approach remains incremental basis, so that the people are not overwhelmed and overburdened. Because if you do, somehow it's going to affect your turnover, and people will begin to look for alternatives. Look at the issue of electricity. Today, while we are trying to, energize the market and bring about improved liquidity for the market, a lot of the big customers are already leaving that stream. It's now an alternative. They are investing heavily in alternative energy, and government will be losing money, because if the companies do not get money, they will not pay the necessary tax, because people have alternative. If you have alternative, then the rate of funding for that particular electricity on the grid or off grid will be low. If you have invested in solar energy, you won't. So the same. So they have to be careful how they overburden people with tariff, because it can actually engender innovation that will eventually impart on already made investment in that sector. Yeah.
But you know, these telecommunications, they've aired their concerns as to cost of running these telecommunications, how we have increase in most of our essentials, food items, logistics, and all of those. These people are running businesses as well, and they've also, you know, aired concerns around increase in running this business. Isn't it fair to an extent that there should be consideration so that they don't run at a loss? And then when you talk about alternatives, how we have alternatives for energy and other, what are the possible alternatives to, you know, some of these services like the telecom services that we're looking at?
I will start from the second leg of your question. Whenever people are pressured, definitely it will lead to innovation and creativity. And the fortunate thing is that it may not even be Nigerian market dependent. As you see, the so-called alternative energy we are investing in electricity, is going to China and most Western countries where those materials are being imported from. So I think that there should be transparency and accountability. We are running a mixed economic model, largely capitalist in nature. These are private sector companies. However, the evil of capitalism, or the excess of capitalism, is often modulated by the intervention of state, which is why the state are the ones who license you to operate. Because if we allow, remember there was a time in this country, any call you make is 1 minute. It took a lot of fight for them to do per second billing. We are still experiencing that with the DSTV, where, you know, whether you watch it or not, it goes off after 1 month. There was a time in this country where we were even told that the telecom communication gadget is not for everybody. Same were being sold at 50,000. Over time, competition made it possible for people. Today, we are not even talking about calls and tests. There is a heavy inflow of liquidity through data. People use data even more than they make calls, because people now communicate through visuals. And this is where the problem lies: transparency and accountability in the billing system. I can bet that most Nigerians do not even understand about the billing system. In fact, while we are discussing this, if there is no sufficient transparency, you may already have been experiencing incremental billing. You have heard people complain about poor services, and yet their data has gone. Nobody restored it. Their core credit unit is also, you are making call, you can't even understand the person. So I understand from the private sector point of view the idea that there is general rise in the cost of logistics and operation. But how do we work out the details to determine what should be the necessary increase, that you are not just responding to maybe the usual bogus profit margin you are used to? You have to also recognize that it's the general low economic condition, and that people do not have access to the kind of economic fortunes they are used to. In that regard, you will not just wake up and say your tariff is to be increased by 100%. And it was 100% earlier.
Yeah.
Now they went into discussion with the regulator, who I don't know if they even had any consultation, approved 50%. Imagine, and this is also about how we make policy and how we value citizens' engagement.
So can we blame this on regulation now? Of regulation.
Absolutely, because you see, regulators may have thought that they have absolute powers. However, they are not the final consumer. They are part of the final consumer, but they are not. So they cannot stay in their high office and make a determination as what it should be. And I think that those who probably utilize the services more, have access to more economic opportunity, can be paid more. These things can actually be, you know, modeled that way. And then the opportunity also, like we are talking about in electricity, to give people access to units. as a form of subsidy, rather than paying the subsidy without it getting to the people. You have to also look at it, the value chain, how many people that may be affected, because you are not going to be there in the streets, on the streets, to implement the multiplier effect. Once a service provider in a local area heard that, oh, remember the POS system, the moment they couldn't access cash, and we are still heavily cash-dominated economy, on their own, they increase the charges to people. And that is a burden that you cannot even explain, because it's happening within an informal sector, where nobody, is only if you experience it, you will know that a POS person on the street is simply telling you. Remember that also those POS, because they are working promptly and instantly, is because they depend on internet. They are not like the old POS. So they will be paying more on data now. So it's not just about you as an individual making call. In running your office, you need internet to power a lot of things. You will be paying more. That also adds to your own cost of doing business, which will eventually be passed to the consumer. So that discussion that should engage the people more, and incremental approach for me is the best. Nothing stops you from doing something in 6 months, 1 year, in the next 2 years. Have a model that businesses and individuals can use to plan.
So with all of this that you have highlighted now, what specific role should the NCC and Consumer Protection Commission be playing at this point in time?
First, they need to, people are not even aware of the actual billing system. Yes, things, whether the consumer protection people, I don't think they even have the right technology to do audit trail on the telecom companies. Don't forget, there was a time we said MTN was owing Nigeria about 500 million or so as a fine for some level of infractions and what have you. Today, we still face the same challenge. So what should we expect from regulators? One, acquire the necessary capacity, latest technology to be able to regulate that sector promptly. Because it's important that you're able to audit them, promptly, and you're able to also apply necessary penalties to offenders. Then the consumer protection tool must do more with awareness creation and sensitization of people to understand. The telecom people are doing their part, maybe telling you, oh, this is our data rate, billing system, oh, participate in this service, you get this. And the sector too, apart from the literate and educated people, for most of our people who are using these services, they don't even know how to easily resolve complaints. If you watch the model of office management for the most of the telecoms, they have no offices or complaint commission or service complaint agent where people can even talk to. Because some of the people using them cannot even dial anything on their own without the help of somebody. So if something happens, they have no means to even know. It may interest you to know that in the village, oh, network is bad. Oh, it's network. Oh, let me cut it. This is what, in December, and most of us who travel to our village, we experience a lot of challenges with communication. And on each occasion, your data is going, at the end of the month, they say, oh, it can't work again, you need to roll it over, but all those times the services failed. You were not able to gain back, and you may have lost opportunities. There are even things because of failure of service that you may not quantify in terms of money. And therefore, the Consumer Protection Commission and the NCC as the lead regulator must play a key role in getting people to understand the sector better, getting them to understand how to also make complaints, getting them to understand their rights and privileges and even obligations. Because that knowledge is critical for the people to benefit from whatever service they're providing. Yeah.
But let's look at the business climate, particularly in Nigeria, and then telcos. Has this climate been fair to, telecom providers in Nigeria?
Well, I can tell you that we don't participate in their audit process. They've been the one publishing their annual account and announcing humongous, profits. In fact, the account, right now, significantly, they contribute to the country's GDP more in the non-oil sector. Digital economy is leading the path, and telecom contribute the most in that trail. So I wouldn't say, I don't think that apart from issues of vandalism, insecurity, and the failure of the state to provide access to electricity and power, because I see that most of their communication facilities, they have to put power in 24 hours to be able to serve people, and they have to put security men there. They practically live in those facilities to be able to protect it from vandalism and what have you. And these are the areas I think the state can do more. If a company is doing well, paying taxes, has employed your citizens in the hundreds of thousands of them, and created other value chain retail jobs, then you need to also fulfill your part. You can't have them to continue using diesel. Now, diesel is very high, so it adds to their own cost. Outside the volatility in the dollar, because most of the equipment are also imported. And then insecurity that has affected, as I think sometime last year, large-scale vandalization of the communication equipment. These are the problems that I know is not the responsibility of ordinary citizens, but the government, of the day at every point in time. When you liberalize the sector, if you allow it to run, in the manner we are now experiencing with the people, almost independent of providing everything for themselves, except for the fact that there is a huge market in Nigeria they are tapping into. I think that aspect is also unfair. But having said that, the fact and data available support that irrespective of these challenges they face, they continue to post huge profits because Nigeria is a veritable market for them. And I think as at recent report, we have over 120 million or thereabouts who are subscribers to these telecom companies, and many more are even coming up. So, yeah.
All right, we'll take a quick break now. We have been speaking with Ambassador Chibuzo Okereke, who is a public policy analyst, taking us on his perspective and contributions as to the proposed strike on the increase of telecom tariff, 50% tariff. We'll take a quick break. The program continues shortly. Many thanks for staying with us. We still have Ambassador Chibuzo Okereke in the studio. Okay, sir. When we saw in the papers there was supposed to be a proposed strike this morning by the NLC over this tariff hike that is now even 50%. But we saw in the papers that the federal government has set up a committee to negotiate and ensure that these issues are properly taken care of through dialogue. Do you think that a strike would have been, better, would have yielded better results, or what do you think would be the outcome of this negotiation?
Well, I don't think that strike is actually the last option. First, in the 3 C's of engagement, you understand, you have consultation, you have consolidation of the outcome of that consultation before, in quote, you have confrontation, which is like the strike tool, and the more other levels of engagement has also been included. At the end of the day, this is how state apparatus works. The labor and other pressure group people, they will engage the government on the issue. So I'm happy that they have suspended the strike, because even in large-scale wars, it will still end at the table for you to find a peace. Labour had maintained that it would prefer 10% increase at the time. The regulator had approved 50%, which is where I believe we had the gap. We should have done engagement with critical stakeholders so that it will even be a collective decision to make an announcement that this is what the groups and the different stakeholders have agreed. It may not be totally what the telecom companies want at the time, but it's a way forward. So it's good that the federal government knows the implication. The strike will cost more than what we are talking about, because a lot of essential economic and social services will be shut down when the labor is on strike. We have seen that situation in the past. You may not even have light, in your business places. Even the telecom may not work optimally when you go on strike. So this committee should be able to look at it in the reality of economic situation in Nigeria, and not being sentimental or emotional. Reality, data, facts should support. And then what role should government play? Is there need for a model that allows for intervention for the poor, and then those who can afford it, will be able to pay a certain level of tariff increase. Bearing in mind that almost every essential service Nigerians are paying for, we have increased tariff on them, whether it is electricity, whether it's water, even the new wage that have been paid. Most of those things were not even considered at the time the new minimum wage was approved. So if you look at it now, there's now an increase of almost 30% from the original cost used to negotiate the new minimum wage. And this is the challenge that is avoidable. So the government has taken the right step, and we support that strike should be suspended, engagement should move smoothly and fast, and let them come out with a middle ground that allows the telecoms to continue in business and the people not to be overburdened with a lot of taxes and levies.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chibuzo, for your contribution on this topic of national interest. Well, that's how much we can take on our conversation here. Up next, we'll have Uyi Agbomofoegbe take you on our second conversation. Stick around, the program continues.
Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics. And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well-informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Now, if you follow the news, particularly between Thursday of last week and up through that entire weekend, there's a pretty good chance that you must have seen here on our television the news story about the change in leadership at Bayes University in Abuja. Of course, newspapers were also, the story was replicated across several major newspaper platforms just to establish the fact that there's now change of guard, as they say, at Bayes University here in Abuja. We're seeing talking points now, sort of emerging from that development as of today. For example, there are now questions about what exactly will the new leadership under the new Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, and a few other key officers do differently, going forward for a university that has actually raised its game in terms of tertiary education innovation. This morning, incidentally, we're joined by the newly appointed registrar, whose appointment, by the way, is effective yesterday. Talking about one man who has been a regular in our programs here, shedding light on many of national issues, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, now the registrar of Bayes University. Prof, first of all, it's not out of place to say congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I mean, like they say, you have cut your teeth in journalism, communication, done a lot of work in consultancy, and now you have established yourself as a pivotal academic, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. I mean, time for us to read your citation this morning on the program. But I want us to look at what has changed. I mean, this looks like a learning curve. Some people say, university administration at this level.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think all glory goes to God, and secondly, it's also important to give complete credits, to the founder, proprietor of the university, distinguished Senator Dati Baba Ahmed, who thought me worthy of the appointment, and of course, under the leadership of a very experienced administrator, a career educationist, and of course, a scholar par excellence, Professor Jamila Ashwara. So the charge that the vision of the university, distinguished Dati Ahmed, is giving us, is to position the university into the next level. In the last 14 years, the university has been at the cutting edge of innovation, IT innovation, pioneering tertiary education, like you already alluded to in your introduction, not just in the FCT, but beyond, and becoming a very competitive university within the Nigeria and even the Africa global ecosystem. What this means is that there's a complete recognition of the importance of education, as a stage for the fertilization of the mind, the growing of confidence, enhancement, of skills, and of course the systematic processing of individuals, towards becoming useful, not just for the self, but for the greater system that they find themselves, true impact, true effect, true productivity and efficiency. Education is key, and the university system is at the center of this education. And of course, Bayes University is positioning itself as a key player within this matrix. It's a responsibility that the founder, has given to himself. He did it maybe at about the age of 40 and has been consistent at it. Now the university massively, because of hard work from past leaders, under his able leadership, has grown, but we need a lot more growth, which is what we are set, is a challenge we are set to take on, with the help of God.
Incidentally, you are also the immediate past Dean, School of Postgraduate Studies at the Bayes University. You have made an impact there, no doubt about it. But how do you intend to use that, leverage it as a basis to further expand your work, your role now as the registrar?
Well, it's also an indication of the kind of managerial acumen that the owner has, without necessarily flattering him. I joined the university as a regular lecturer. From there I became HOD, and from there I became deputy dean, then dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies, and now massively a registrar. You can see this growth over a period of about 12 years. So apart from the grace of God, This is also come from the creation of a conducive environment, from the instrument of the ownership, to the creation of a learning system that is not just about impacting knowledge, but about growing those who also impact the knowledge. So there are different levels of it. You have students that you are developing. You also have lecturers that you are developing, because as somebody at the heart of impacting knowledge, if you are not developing, you cannot impact knowledge effectively. Considering the frenetic changes that we are witnessing in the world of knowledge. And this development shouldn't just be at the level of intellection, or if you want to put it in a primitive form, textbook knowledge. You also have to be able to exemplify it in your characteristics and, of course, in your displays, in your adventures in the town. Because education is not supposed to be an end in itself, but a means to an end. And, of course, by the time you acquire it within the university ecosystem, there's supposed to be some direct impact on the society at large. And the society at large also begins from the university system, where other things happen apart from learning. There are other activities transpiring in the university that happens apart from learning. This also needs levels of perfection, right? And of course, BASE is blessed with a pack of professionals with quality experience. Imagine Professor Shuara now. He has been at the leadership of the federal education system those days. From there to scholarship, both in the Bayero University, Kano, United States of America, and of course he's been permanent secretary in 5 different ministries over about 5 or 6 years, including the Ministry of Education. And she retired into the university system, where she has also been director of strategy, director of planning, director of academic planning, and eventually registrar before vice chancellor. You can see the rise, the mutation and the gestation. So which means that, of course, substantial level of experiences have been cultivated over these years, which will be brought to bear by the grace of God in the administration of the university. And of course, all these, is also nested in the vision and the identification ability of the owner, who just feels that it has to be, excellence all the way. And of course, nothing short of that will work for the system that he has put in place.
One of the factors that stood out on the day that your appointments, as well as the others, were announced just a matter of days ago, was that the leadership of the institution makes deliberate efforts to align appointments with the ultimate vision of the school. Right. Having said that, BASE University has raised the bar in terms of innovation in education. How do you intend to contribute to that, by way of sustaining that culture?
Oh no, there are a couple of things that Professor Shuara is leading us to start imagining, and that's why a couple of people have said, okay, a professor as registrar, this is a strategic appointment, When you are head of department, you are in administration. When you are a dean, you are in administration. And of course, registrarship is also administrative. But as a professor being here simply means the integration of governance, governance with administration, and beyond that, the integration of an understanding of knowledge production and generation, in relation to the administrative framework of the university. And of course, when you have these coalescing, what you expect by the grace of God is stability and sustainability. Quite a number of things are in the offing. The things that have been laid before, of course, will be strengthened, and of course there will be new innovations, that the professor, the vice chancellor, is leading us to imagine, and we are there to provide the necessary support, with the enablement of the ownership, and of course with the grace of God being on our side too.
We understand that there's been this increasing role of digital communication across the globe. Of course, the world is not a global village, as they say. But the concern is how exactly is technology helping to reshape higher education and higher learning overall on a global scale?
You cannot discount the place of technology in the times that we are in, because it's upon us, and the pace is very very frenetic, okay, even frenzied, okay, and of course, I always say that if your technology is more than 6 months old, it's outdated, you know, because new innovations are coming up. So the onus is on you, us, the users, to be adaptive, you know, to be adaptive. And of course, Business University is funded on the basis of this paradigm, recognizing the importance of technology. We've been led recently by the owner to reframe you know, departments or faculties that are central to this change in the way that their emphasis on technology and innovation, you know, will be clearer, right? Like the computing faculty, for instance, is also going to be integrated with information technology as well. You know, and of course, there are other faculties, other innovations coming up, you know. Remember, you need to just visit the place and see our technological infrastructure, how deep-seated, how expansive, how billions of naira, even dollars have been invested in this drive, you know. It's a postmodern university by all means. Even our learning patterns is quite consistent. Changes have been happening in the classrooms, you know. The CCTV network is complete, you know. Practically all sections of the university is covered. And of course, students are also encouraged, you know, to leverage this technology for interaction with their supervisors, their lecturers, you know, and their mentors, as the case could be. So it's a route that we're traveling, and we cannot detract from that route, and not just because of the initial vision of ownership, but from the dictates of the times that we are in, that is completely nested in increasing changes in technologies of communication, technologies of learning, and technologies of doing things as a whole.
Let me try to bundle two questions into one. I'm sure you are aware, Prof, that in the last couple of years, there have been calls for TED Fund, the Tertiary Education Fund, to extend its intervention to private universities. At the risk of making you be a judge in your own cause, is it realistic to make that call? That's the first. The second is, we're not talking PPP, even within the higher education system. What more should we do by way of trying to sustain whatever growth or development we're seeing in our tertiary education space?
Well, it's what TED Fund is doing is all right, you know, but I think at some point in the future they might have to review this policy about supporting only public institutions. You know, what do you do? Would
that not alter the mandates of the agency?
I'll build an argument towards that.
Right.
Now, what do you do, you know, with the banking sector? Do we not have government supporting them, creating the right environment? You know, sometimes
even lifelines.
Yeah, sometimes indirectly intervening to save them from collapsing. Realizing the importance of the financial, the role of banking sector in the financial sector, in the financial industry, and how it's critical to the stabilization and sustenance of the economy. The banking sector is largely in the hands of the private sector. And of course, there are other sectors too, even the petroleum sector. Government has interventions, you know, through joint venture partnership and all of that, you know. And because of how government does it, because that sector is very critical as a financial mainstay of the country. And of course, when you're coming to educational sector too, we have more private universities now than public universities. And even in ranking, private universities are doing better than public universities. Yes, I do not have to be afraid of saying this, even in some of these, as controversial as they might be. You know, there have been several rankings that places many private universities above public universities. And of course, even from our own exposure, you know, we see the facilities in some of these public universities. I can, without being immodest, you know, I can likely say many cannot compare with what we have in Base University, for instance, or in Afema Balola, or in Covenant University. This is a fact, you know. And how do these private organizations get funded? Apart from institutional fundings, churches, maybe personal prosperity of ownership, the other thing is bank facility. And you see where the interest rate is, you know. This can be killing, you know, this can be actually disillusioning. So you need a steel heart to power on. And that's why if government comes into support, it simply means that government is supporting the growth of the tertiary education sector, rather than government seeing it as if they are supporting the prosperity of private entrepreneurs in education. That's how I see it. And of course, I've drawn the corollary between the educational sector and other sectors of the national economy. And finally, if you're asking me to answer this kind of question, I'm not being a judge in my own case. Remember that I've also been in the public space, hearing my modest opinion on so many issues. So it's practically, I beg your pardon, just a continuation of what I've been doing, not necessarily judging my own case. So I think government might need to do a rethink in the future.
Right.
If we want to make support, for different sectors of the economy, if we want to make support holistic, as the case could be.
Let's talk about, just before we take a break now, let's talk about some of the key principles that should guide effective governance and policy implementation in the university system.
How do you mean again?
Some of key principles that will help guide effective, academic governance and policy implementation.
These principles are very key, because education is a service and it's a soft one, and not necessarily the hard aspects of life that's concerned about physical productions. Education is ingraining ideas, ingraining notions, knowledge into individuals. That's why it's an intangible, but it's an effective intangible. And of course, when you're managing intangible, we are talking about values, we are talking about virtues.
Right.
And of course, in that kind of environment, you need high ethical standards. You need credibility, you need integrity. Right, built not just in the teachers but also in the one in those that are taught, and you cannot compromise this, and that's why in base, the owner from the beginning does not suffer fools gladly. He does not compromise standards, and of course indiscipline is not also condoned, and you also have a leadership. In Professor Jemila Shuara, who is also a stickler for principles, and these people, have deep religious values that they subscribe to. So all these things will drive us, and will continue to drive us by the grace of God on the path of credibility, integrity, and subscription to high values. Because remember, this is right. The education is not just you meeting requirements in learning, but also in character. And what defines character? Character is your overarching values that you subscribe to, your conduct, your disposition, your demeanor, okay, how you relate with others in a community of people, the level of ethics that you subscribe to. All those things are embedded in the conception of the word character. And that is something that we subscribe to highly in base, which is why our disciplinary procedure is painstaking and rigorous. But we often wish that students or anyone else, even lecturers, will not fall into the net where questions will be asked on their conduct.
Okay, so much said very brilliantly. Let's take a quick break now, everyone. We'll return a few more questions to ask, including how we can, as it were, leverage even consultancy of some kind within this conversation we're having on the program this morning. All of that and more coming shortly. Do stay with us. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Prof, I need to ask you, what are some of the insights from media and consultancy that can be applied to improve educational management and administration in Nigeria?
Yeah, well, my background is actually media.
Even though many people may not know that.
From journalism, to the academia, and of course the bridge was created through the British Chipman Scholarship in England, and of course Masters and PhD. Media is reflective. Media is integrative. Media is informational, communicational, and in modern times largely conversational. In that process, it creates a ground, for the exemplification of the things that you have imbibed from the educational process.
Right.
Education, remember, I said earlier, it's not an end in itself, but a means to an end. So how do we know the productivity of education, if not through the media? How do we learn about the efficiency of the educational sector, if not through the media? So media is a platform, for the showcasing, of outcome or outputs of the educational sector. And of course, it provides room for feedback. And of course, it's from feedback you can do reviews and work towards improvement. So there's a natural connection between media and education, between communication and education. Because if you look at it fundamentally itself, there can be no education without media.
Right.
Neither can there be media without education. Because how do we're talking about technologies of learning, technologies of teaching, all these as a result of the transformation of information and communications technology, which by extension is media and communication related. So it's integral to it, and of course they're like the Siamese twins that cannot be separated.
Let's talk about strategies that universities can adopt to enhance student engagement as well as learning experiences.
So, the students that we have these days, are also it's also a reflection of the times that we are in. Students are more inclined towards technology. They are more fast-paced. They are not like the students of old, that had to walk extra mile to get information. Now information is in the palm of every student through the instrument of their telephone, right? So there's often a struggle between the patterns of old, and the manners of the new, manners of contemporariness. So instructors try to bridge that gap. And if you don't bridge that gap well, the student will be lost, and you too, you will not be delivering what you are out to deliver. Okay? But again, we must also commend the students of present times, because most of them are able to learn faster than the days of old. Because it was much more laborious for us those days, because you
have to go to a physical library.
But now the library is on their phone, and of course they are also taking advantage of it. So if a lecturer, for instance, is not research oriented, is not learning oriented, is like to be embarrassed by a student who is far ahead of him or her on account of the knowledge that he has around him. Right? Because they learn these things ahead of the lecturers most of the time. Sometimes not even through reading or engaging with their equipment, but from their travels and exposure. Okay? But again, we also try to guide against artificial, what do you call
AI?
it? No. Before we get to AI, superficial
learning.
Superficial learning.
Learning without depth, without substance.
Right. So we guide against it, telling them that, look, you still need the library, you still need to consult books, where you get depth, where you get critical engagement with notions and our essences, So all these things are coming up in the matrix, in the new age we are in. And of course, we have put mechanisms in place in Bez University to make sure that we do not lose any of the pieces in the jigsaw.
Let's also look at, this is an era of globalization. How can universities, whether in Nigeria or anywhere across the world, also take advantage of international collaboration to continue to raise the bar on academic standards and excellence?
You can't actually depart from it, really, when it comes to partnership and collaboration, because learning is collaborative.
Right.
Everything that we do is actually about partnership, about collaboration. Even if you start from the ordinary platform of having visiting professors, adjunct professors coming to you, they come to spice your mix, with new notions, diverse notions, consistent with the ordinary understanding of the university. It's about universality.
Right.
And this is not new. It started from ages ago, from the beginning of the first university in the world, in Bologna, Spain, onto Oxford and Cambridge, some of the oldest universities in the world, and of course onto Harvard. It's actually about collaboration and partnership, and it's even increasing with the platformization of the world, through communications technology. So again, coming down to base, we're not joking with this. We have departments in charge of it, at least about 2 or 3 departments, if I can. And department and director is directly in charge of partnership and collaboration. And we've had it severally. We have had interventions, support from different organizations, and we'll keep having more. But at the same time, we want to be careful. We want partnerships, to be beneficial. We do not want partnership, that we're going to suspect for any reason. So we do our due diligence, welcoming partners, and of course, anyone that we imagine will be productive. We'll get the right permission, we'll proceed with them.
We need to talk about young academics and journalists who are seeking to also contribute meaningfully to education and research. What would you have them know?
Oh, there are so many things. Yeah, it will lead us to AI now. Artificial intelligence is just there to feed us with information, but we have to be careful. Again, we'll come back to the question of superficial knowledge. You need knowledge to be deep-seated. It's only that one, that route that can give you confidence, give you knowledge, that is more ingrained, that will be longer lasting, and that you can apply appropriately to the town by the time you get out of the gown. Because if it is fast-paced, just like that, of course, debt will be absent, and it's a shifting process. It's a fluid process, and that's why I would say knowledge has to be continuous, and you have to be adaptive and adaptive, realizing that new notions are emerging every day. Even as we speak, new theories are being built. Okay, and for you to participate in it, you must consult widely. And consulting widely is not just by going to different sites, but by reading widely, okay? Because people are thinking every day. We have limitations in our environment, so there might be impediments, but in other climes, people are also thinking quickly. And of course, maybe from even more qualitative perspective. Through partnership, collaboration, opportunities are there for us to learn faster from this one, domesticate them, apply them to our own environment, and of course NUC is also very responsive in this regard through the transition from BMAS to CMAS, realizing that universities might want to also come up with their own ingenuity through the development of courses, that they need within their own environment. These things are adding up, and of course, becoming rewarding in many circumstances. So it's a continuous process, but through this process, there must be credibility and integrity and commitment, because there are temptation, to detract from the narrative of quality. And if you do not guide against this temptation, you might cave in, which is a disservice to the learning process.
Higher education has evolved very radically the last couple of decades, particularly at the turn of the 21st century. Let's talk about moments or trends that have significantly shaped the academic landscape.
Governments have come up over the years with different policies. I think one critical moment will be the evolution of the private universities. Before there we had private secondary schools. I think it was the Obasanjo administration that brought up, that liberalized
the space,
tertiary educational sector. And of course, we had pioneer private universities, if I remember correctly, Madonna University, Igbinedion University. See, they were the initial.
That argument is still on about which is first between both. But the Igbinedion University, Okada, would say our license bears 001, and as such, we are. De facto number one.
So we have quite a number on that. So that transformation is actually immense, and of course it has contributed a lot, because of the limited carrying capacities, carrying capacity of public universities against the background of our burgeoning population. From 100 million to 150 million, we're talking about the excess of 200 million. Even as we are sitting here, people are not still able to get admission into universities. I have people that couldn't get into public universities, and they are home because of our population. So there's an explosion going on, and there's nothing wrong with us having more universities, really, as long as NUC continue to keep rightful watch on these universities. Brazil, huge population, imagine the number of universities and higher institutions that they have. Indonesia, United States of America. Apart from universities, they have colleges. Okay, and all these are institutions for growing people towards populating the human resource quotient, quota of a national economy, which is significant to for the achievement of for enhancing the well-being of the people. Yeah, we also know that it's not all about education. But even when we say it's not all about education, we understand the importance of having some basic knowledge of doing things so that the ability to interact in a social system can be enhanced. And that comes through some level of education. But in our own climate, we cannot compromise with university education because it's higher, and of course puts you at a pedestal, for the future.
Let's talk about fundamental changes that are needed in university administration to leave a lasting impact on education in this country.
I think the change that we need, will also be around the intangible, okay? Some level of commitment, some level of subscription to high values, leading by example, and not compromising. Not having your hand shouldn't be caught in the cookie jar, and of course there are some other ailments and some other malfeasance that we often identify in the system, harassment of any sort, realizing again that the position that you are in is not for you to oppress people, not for you to take advantage of, but for you to prioritize the interests of others above yourself for the benefit of the overall system. And what legacy are you leaving when you find yourself in leadership position? See it as an opportunity to serve humanity from your own prism. Okay, if you lead by example, others will follow. Respect is usually earned, right?
Not demanded.
No. Sometimes don't corral it. I've cited the example of. Permit me to cite the example of my bosses, for instance. If you look at Dati Baba, senator, look at his track record of achievement. He himself has a PhD from a first-class university in economics, and he thought he wants to make an impact in the educational sector. And he came about Base University and has been very consistent. Look at the Vice Chancellor, Jamila Ashwara. Look at her track record from the College of Education system to federal management system, the springboard of national administration, and of course to the university system, getting to the top as well. Track record of consistency, focus, okay? And of course, I won't be talking about myself, but if you look at me too, God has been kind, and the best way you can actually work for the society, for the educational sector, is to show example. Let people see what you are preaching, from your conduct, and let people, even without you saying anything, let your conduct, be an eye opener to how things should be. And you see that change will begin to emerge within the larger system. And that's the point we're making, and even in the political sphere, in the economic sphere. We need leadership reorientation, a greater level of commitment, so that others can follow. Not just from what you say, but from what you do. Because if what you do contradicts what you say, you cannot really galvanize people